All right, class, in our video about consonants earlier today, we talked about the consonants that have more than one sound. Class, who can tell me which consonants have more than one sound? All right, I hope you were able to tell me what's the first one when we're going through our alphabet. Good. K, s. What's the next one? Good. G, j. And the next one? The last one, I should say, s, z. All right, class, some of you, if I'm writing things on the board and I'm making a video and we're not doing spelling words, some of you are very diligent about writing down everything on the board. I'm not worried about you writing down everything on the board. I'm worried about you listening and keeping the information in your head. All right, so just keep that in mind. I'm not, because sometimes I know if I'm trying to write everything down, I'm more focused on that than listening, and I definitely want us focused on listening. All right, so the only three consonants that have more than one sound are these three. What is it? Good. K, s, g, j, and good. S, z. All right, well, the nice thing is that we have rules for two of them. That one, we don't have a rule that's quite as definite for it. But you can go ahead and go to page 3 of your notebook again. Under where we wrote all our consonants, over here on the side, you can go ahead and write k, s over here, and then g, j below it. All right, because we want to have documented the rules for when these say their first sound and when they say their second sound. All right. Oh, that reminds me, who can tell me all of our phonograms? So some of our phonograms just have one sound, like a lot of our consonants, but our vowels, and then when we get into our multi-letter ones, a lot of them have more than one sound. Class, how do we know which sound our phonograms usually say? Which of its sounds? If I have a phonogram that has 3 sounds, like a, ah, which sound is it usually going to say? Oh, it's usually going to say ah. Good, so all our phonograms usually say their first sound. It comes first because that's the sound it makes the most often. All right, so that means for our k, s, which sound is it usually going to say? Good. K. All right, I said earlier in the year, that's kind of the default. The default is what you automatically go to. All right, if everything else is the same, the default means you just go there and do that. So our first sound is the default for our phonograms, unless there's something that changes that. All right, so our k, s usually says k. We want to know the rule for when it says s. All right, some of you know it. I'm wondering if anyone can say the whole rule without any help. What is it? Oh, I think I heard Kately say the whole thing. C followed by E, I, or Y says S. Right, I'm going to move this down. Say that with me. C followed by E, I, or Y says S. All right, one more time. I'll do it in chunks this time in case this is the first time you've heard it, if you were pretty new to our school. C followed by E. Say that. C followed by E, I, or Y says S. Good. Say the whole thing with me. C followed by E, I, or Y says S. All right. C followed by E, I, or Y says S. Oops. So you might notice between my E and I, and then after my I, I've got commas, remember, because we're making a list. And anytime we're making a list, we're going to put commas between the different things in our list. So C followed by E, I or Y says S. We're going to show with C with the 2 on top of it. I know we don't mark our words that way, but it helps us remember S. All right, say that rule with me one more time. C followed by E, I, or Y says S. Oh, I can think of a good example of this rule. It's something we eat a lot in my house. Class, what's this word? Good, rice. And since this C has an E after it, it's saying S, because, say it with me, C followed by E, I, or Y says S. All right. And then, of course, let's see, a lot of words that rhyme with rice. Who can tell me a word that rhymes with rice? Wait, if we took this off, right? What is that? Good, ice. Wait, what if we changed it to a what would that be? Good, mice. What if we changed it to an what would that be? Good, nice. All right, so all of those words, and there's so many others, but any word where we have E, I, or Y after our C, it's going to make it say its second sound, S. All right, so that's going to help us when we're reading. Anytime we see this, if there's E, I, or Y after it, we know we're going to say S. We also need it sometimes for spelling. You might be able to see here, whenever we have a silent final E, which we use all the time, and we want the K sound before it, what do we have to use? Oh, I think Tristan just told me line letter K. All right, because remember, anytime C has E after it, it's going to say S. So if we want a K sound, like in this word, and this is, of course, with the silent final E. Job 1, that's making our vowel say its name. We're going to have to use line letter K, because if we use K, S, oh, that would actually be a different word. We actually have that word. Right, so this first word, what's our first word? Good, K. And then the glare is always where I don't want it to be. But I'll move this word over here. Let's read this word. Good. S. All right, because that silent final E makes our K say S. All right, so if we want a K sound, anytime we've got a silent final E, job 1, making our vowel say its name, we have to use line letter K. All right, so it's important to know this rule for spelling, but even more important so we feel comfortable when we're reading and we come to a C. It's kind of like with our silent final E, job 1, we have to look ahead a little bit and see what's going to happen later on so we know to say that right sound. All right, so that's our C rule. Say that with me one more time. C followed by E, I, or Y says S. Good. Now our G rule, this one will take a little bit less time because it's almost exactly the same. There's one word that's different. Oh gosh. All right, that's our C rule. Our G rule is G followed by E, I, or Y may say J. All right, say that with me so that it's exactly the same except we put may say instead of says. This C, it has to say its second sound if E, I, or Y comes after it. This one, it doesn't. It just can. All right, so our rule is G followed by E, I, or Y may say J. All right, say that with me. G followed by E, I, or Y may say J. And I'm going to write may and I'm going to underline it because that's an important word. May say J. All right, so this one isn't quite as certain as this one. This one, when we see a G with E, I, or Y after it and we're reading, I would first try J, but then if that doesn't work, we can go back to G. Because again, for G, J, it doesn't make it say J. It might say J, but it doesn't have to like our C does. All right, so if you don't have that written in your second little line here, under our consonants, by your G that you wrote earlier, go ahead and write G followed by E, I, or Y may say J. Pause the video till you're finished with that. All right, I'm going to give you a quick example of it. All right, let's look at our word we have here. Oh, we've got a silent final E job 1 again. It's making our A say A. All right, let's see. Let's read this word. Let's try this saying its second sound first. Did that make sense? Was that a word we know? It sure was. P-A-J, page. All right, so here we see that our G is saying J because it's got our silent final E after it. It does not have to though. So let's look at an example where our G, J still says G even though it has E, I, or Y after it. Because remember, it's just G followed by E, I, or Y may say J. All right, this is not a very tricky word, no rules or anything. Let's look at it. All right, so you probably knew because I said it was going to be saying its first sound to say G. If you tried J, hopefully you realize that word is spelled differently, right? So it's G, et, get. All right, so remember, these are our two consonant rules. This one we use all the time. This one, we don't use it quite as much, at least not in second grade, but I think when we get to bigger and longer words, this is really helpful. All right, so these are our two most important consonant rules. And remember again, this helps us because some of our consonants have more than one sound, and we want to know, when does it say its second sound? All right, well, this video got a little longer than I meant it to, class, so we will, we're not going to get to more about our vowels today, but we will tomorrow. All right, have a wonderful day, and I can't wait to see you back in person.